This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting.
Good evening, and we're coming back on the air at this hour with major developments in the special counsel's investigation into former President Donald Trump. ABC News has confirmed at this hour that Donald Trump and his lawyers have just been informed about 20 minutes ago that the former president needs to be at a federal court in Miami on Tuesday at 3 p.m. to be processed on federal charges. This, of course, would be the first president ever to be indicted on federal charges. I want to bring in several members of our investigative team, beginning with Catherine Faulders, our senior reporter. And Catherine, what are your sources telling you as far as the number of counts at this point and the range of what's being charged here?
David, we're learning from our sources that there appears to be at least 7 counts here. This ranges from everything from the willful retention of national defense information to conspiracy, to a scheme to conceal, to false statements and representations. Obviously, this is part of a more than years-long investigation by special counsel Jack Smith and Trump's efforts to obstruct the government to give documents in his possession with classification markings back to government investigators who at multiple times throughout this investigation have tried to retrieve them from Trump. They still had questions about whether Trump still currently has classified documents in his possession. But again, we're learning that at this hour, we're told by our sources that there are at least 7 counts here, and they range from everything from willful retention of national defense information to conspiracy to concealing documents of record, David.
Catherine Faulders, our senior investigative reporter with our investigative unit, again reporting just moments ago that Donald Trump, the former president, and his lawyers have been told to appear in a federal court in Miami next Tuesday. 3 p.m. is the time we're told, but we're still reporting this out. Catherine's reporting so far at least 7 counts. Again, our team working on this, at least 7 counts ranging from obstruction to willful retention to conspiracy, also part of the initial reporting on what could be coming from the special counsel. I want to get right to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, working his sources over at the Justice Department. And Pierre, what are you learning from the people you're talking with?
Well, David, we have been told by sources who have been following the case that Trump is expected to appear on Tuesday to be processed in connection with these charges. And we've been told by multiple sources that the special counsel has specifically been focusing on efforts to illegally retain classified documents and producing evidence to show that Trump also willfully obstructed the government's efforts to get those documents back. And David, I can put this in perspective. This is perhaps one of the most consequential investigations the Justice Department has done in recent memory. We're talking about investigating a former president who's seeking to be reelected. They knew this was one of the most consequential cases that they've ever pursued, and I'm told that they have built a case month by month to produce compelling evidence to lay out in detail what Trump did in terms of taking the documents from the White House and then what he did in response to a government subpoena to return those documents. Now, we're also being told that law enforcement and sources will be stepping up security in and around that courthouse in Miami because they don't know quite what the response will be. But again, clearly a very consequential moment, and we'll be hearing more in the coming hours and days, David.
Pierre, just stick with me here because I know your sources are telling you multiple counts. Catherine's reporting at least 7 counts at this hour. And Pierre, as you know, these counts range from obstruction, conspiracy, willful retention of documents pertaining to the national defense. What does this tell you? It would seem it involves more than just the former president when you hear conspiracy being listed as one of these potential multiple counts here.
When you look at the case that they previously laid out in terms of the affidavit for the search warrant, in terms of why they went in, it was clear that the government had indications that there were people working with the president to perhaps move documents, hide documents. There's a key moment that we've been reporting on for some weeks, David, where apparently after receiving the subpoena, Trump and his associates knew that federal prosecutors were going to come to Mar-a-Lago. And apparently there's surveillance footage from the room where some of these documents were being held, in which someone is seen taking the documents out the day before the prosecutors were supposed to get there. And also, David, here's another key thing. Well, you know that one of the attorneys for former President Trump issued a statement provided to DOJ saying, as far as they knew, all the documents had been provided. The FBI then gets a tip that there were still more documents there at Mar-a-Lago. And then when they did that consequential raid, they found more than 100 classified documents, David.
Okay, Pierre Thomas, as soon as you learn more from your sources, Pierre, just raise your hand there and we'll come right back to you again at this hour. We are on the air, ABC News live coverage. Former President Donald Trump has been informed, he and his attorneys have been informed that the special counsel will hand down an indictment in this case after a months-long investigation lasting actually more than a year here into the handling of classified documents discovered at Mar-a-Lago. We are told at this hour multiple counts this involves. He's been told to appear in federal court 3 p.m. on Tuesday. I want to bring in John Santucci, also with the investigative unit. John, of course, covered Donald Trump for years when he was president. And John, as to be expected, we wondered if this would happen, and it has played out. The former president confirming himself that he and his attorneys have been informed. He writes that I have been indicted.
David, a very lengthy post from Donald Trump on his social media platform, Truth Social. It's extremely long. He goes on to say he never thought this was possible, calls it a dark day. But David, I can tell you from my sources that have been around the former president for much of the last week, they very much thought this was possible. They have been huddled in Bedminster, New Jersey, where the former president spends his summers, waiting for this today. They have been anxious. They were watching news coverage yesterday of Trump's former spokesperson, Taylor Budowich, going before that grand jury down in southern Florida. And David, that's a bit of a mystery to the Trump team. You know, they've been watching friends, allies, and now enemies of the former president go before a grand jury in Washington, D.C. that's been hearing the presentations by special counsel Jack Smith for the better part of a year. But only up until the last couple of days, few weeks even, did Team Trump learn about this other grand jury. And we believe, David, as we reported here on your show last night, it was when Team Trump received that target letter in just the last couple of weeks that they were told by special counsel Jack Smith that the former president was indeed a target of that investigation. I am told by my sources that the president for the last couple of days has just been waiting for this, knowing it was coming. He joked to one aide, another one, of course referring to his first indictment in Manhattan earlier this year. And we know that they are already planning a trip down to Miami, David. We are told from one source that they are looking at some sort of a campaign event around it, thinking that another indictment will do something better for Donald Trump's chances at a third bid at the White House.